One of the most important things that an administration can do is keep the peace, something that everyone wants. And this administration and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo have certainly lived up to that promise. Secretary Pompeo deserves a lot of credit on this, of what he's done. He joins us live. Mr. Secretary, thanks so much for taking the time on what is a very historic day. I've got to ask you the obvious question. How are you this morning? What's going through your mind on this inauguration day?
Well, good morning, and thanks for having me on with you this morning. Look, it's a historic day. The nation will turn the page. There'll be new leadership in just under 2 hours. I am incredibly proud of the work that President Trump and the national security team has done for America. There's no doubt in my mind that Americans are more secure, more prosperous, that the alliances that we have built around the world are stronger and more durable than they were when we came in. That's our duty. That's the task that we had laid before us. And I'm proud of the things we have achieved with our friends in the Middle East. The fact that we have been the first administration in 5 decades that has seriously understood what the Chinese Communist Party is doing to the world and confronted it. The list is long, and I'm happy that we had these 4 years to work on it. I hope that this continued trend of increased American security will continue.
Let's talk about one of those accomplishments. Yesterday, the administration surprised many by declaring that China's treatment of the Uyghur population amounted to genocide. Tell me why that conclusion was made and why it was so important to make that announcement.
I've been working on this personally for my entire time as Secretary of State. The situation there in Western China, the total absence of religious freedom, the ability for human beings to just live with their families, to marry who they want, the simple things that many in the world take for granted we do here in the United States has been completely absent. They've conducted forced abortions, forced sterilizations, some of the most egregious human rights violations in decades and decades. I have called it before the stain of the century. It is that. And so we had completed our analysis. We had done work with countries all over the world, non-governmental organizations, to make sure we understood the facts precisely enough that I was able to say very clearly that what has taken place there have been crimes against humanity, and that, in fact, the Chinese Communist Party has committed genocide and is continuing to do so there. It's an important declaration, an important determination. I think the world will agree with this analysis and this conclusion. And I hope that we will confront it and we will convince the leadership in China that this is not the right path forward for humanity.
On that same topic, Mr. Secretary, some have been critical of the timing. As Senator Ben Sasse said this recently, he said this decision is good and right, but it's late. The United States isn't taking the Uyghur genocide seriously. What are your comments to that?
Yeah, look, I wish we could have gotten to this conclusion more quickly, too, but it took a lot of work to do it, a lot of effort. You want to make sure you're right. When you make such an important statement, it is absolutely critical that you have done the analysis properly and thoroughly and completely. But we've clearly taken this seriously for much longer than this. A few weeks back, the administration said that cotton that came from this region couldn't be used here in products in the United States. We have sanctioned leaders who'd made decisions about how treatment was taking place with the Uyghurs. We've been working on this problem since long before this determination yesterday. If we might have acted more quickly, it is certainly the case that the previous administrations did nothing, absolutely nothing. And so I'm proud of the work we did. I hope that the next administration will continue to confront and raise these issues, these enormous human rights concerns. They have real implications for American security. When a government behaves this way to its own people, it impacts us here in the homeland.
And if you don't mind, if we could take a look at the next administration here. Anthony Blinken, set to be your replacement, in his Senate confirmation hearing just yesterday, acknowledged that the administration's hardened position on China is right. He had this to say. Take a listen.
As we look at China, there is no doubt that it poses the most significant challenge of any nation state to the United States in terms of our interests, the interests of the American people. We have to start by approaching China from a position of strength, not weakness. And the good news is our ability to do that is largely within our control.
Based on what's said there and what the Biden administration's approach could be with China, Do you anticipate they're keeping up the pressure against the Chinese Communist Party like we've seen from the Trump administration?
I'm counting on it, and more importantly, the American people are counting on it. The American people know this is a challenge that is certainly a military challenge. They have a very capable military. They have a very capable nuclear program, but this problem is at home too. This is inside our gates. You have the Chinese Communist Party having influence inside our research institutions, inside our institutions of higher learning. Those are the places that will prove the test for the next administration. Are they prepared to confront? Are they prepared to confront all of the elements of the influence efforts of the Chinese Communist Party in a serious way? The Trump administration did so, and has continued to do so for its entire 4 years. I know the American people will continue to demand it, and I hope this becomes a true commitment on behalf of America, a bipartisan, broad commitment on behalf of America to challenge the Chinese Communist Party wherever it poses a threat to securing American freedoms.
Back on the domestic front, if we can, on the second impeachment of President Trump, legal experts are not sure that you can even impeach and remove a president at this stage. He's obviously going to be out of office at this time. You heard from Majority Leader Mitch McConnell at this late stage saying that he has taken the position that he has. What do you have to say about Leader McConnell's positioning, what he said so far? It seems to be that they will take up this impeachment in the Senate.
Look, I'm still Secretary of State for a couple more hours. I've done my best to not get involved in U.S. domestic political stuff. I'll say only this. It is time for the country to move on. It is time for us to continue all the good work we've done, whether it's the work we've done to protect the economy with the tariffs that the president put in place, all the things that this president has done as part of his broad national security efforts. These are the things I think the American people know gives middle-class working people from all across America, folks like from my home state in Kansas, the things they care about most. Some of this insider Washington stuff is much less important to them. We ought to focus on the things that matter to the ordinary working people in the United States of America.
Let's talk about the Middle East. The Trump administration has had so many victories on that front. Are you confident that those Middle East peace accomplishments of the administration can endure during a Biden administration?
I hope so. The Middle East is more stable and more secure than it has been in an awfully long time. It was because President Trump refused to accept the establishment view that we couldn't do anything for Middle East peace until the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians was resolved. And the president broke a lot of glass. He recognized Jerusalem as the rightful homeland of the Jewish people there in Israel. We acknowledge that not every settlement is legal here at the State Department. These are basic things, just facts in reality. And we confronted the world's largest state sponsor of terror, the Islamic Republic of Iran. We denied them wealth and resources. I hope that the next administration sees that that's the path forward for the Middle East. If you ask the Gulf states, if you ask the Saudis or the Kuwaitis or the Omanis or the Emiratis, what makes them more safe, what makes them more secure, it is, in fact, the view that the Trump administration has taken. It is those are nations that are not terrorists. They are not supporting al-Qaeda in the way that Iran is. And I hope the next administration will see that it's not 2015 anymore and take this challenge seriously. If that happens, then the good work, the enormous economic and commercial benefit that will flow to the Middle East as a result of all the work we did, including the Abraham Accords, will continue. And they'll be more prosperous, and the United States will be able to sell goods. All of these things will benefit the people of the United States of America as well.
There's no doubt that the efforts that you've made in this administration are unprecedented, with just a couple of things that you've named just then. I'm curious to know, what advice would you give the incoming Secretary of State?
Oh, Mr. Blinken's been around Washington for an awfully long time. My advice to everyone who gets the enormous privilege that I've had to serve America and defend our Constitution is to focus on the things that matter most. Stay on your priorities. Remember why it is that you're there. You're there to serve the American people, and as a Secretary of State, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America. Remember that always. Stay focused on that. Don't let the noise impinge on your moment, the time that you have to have a real impact. That's the wisdom I gave to my whole team while I was serving as Secretary of State. I'd give it to anyone who enters into government service.
Well, that's some great advice there. As you know, we recently lost Sheldon Adelson. You were a friend of his and his wife as well. What's your take on his loss and the impact that it could have on the Republican Party?
You know, I knew Mr. Adelson some, and his wife Miriam as well. I was with them in Israel a number of years back. He was a committed philanthropist, a very capable businessman, and someone who cared deeply about both the United States of America and Israel and our joint efforts to secure democracy in each of those two places. A man like that will be missed for sure. And the things that he's done, the activities, the actions he took while he was here on Earth will be remembered for an awfully long time. We use this often, but it is most deserved here. He was truly a great man.
Mr. Secretary, before we let you go, we have to ask you, what's next for you? What are your plans? There was always this rumbling of a potential presidential ambition in 2024. Is there any truth to that? What's next for Mike Pompeo?
I'm going to go take a break after 4 years, first serving as CIA director and now as secretary. So I'm going to go take a moment. I have some things I want to write, so I'll do a little bit of writing, I expect. Beyond that, I don't know. I this morning am focused on making sure we close everything out here in a way that respects the American people and does things right. And then I'll have a chance to reflect on the incredible opportunity and privilege I've had to take on these two tasks, first as CIA director and now in this role. It's been a blessing. I have been so privileged. I want to thank all the kind people from all across America who have written me notes over the last few weeks, thanking me for my service. Right back at them. I want to thank them all for the notes that they wrote and the support that they have provided to President Trump and myself as we have tried to deliver the President's America First policy all across the world.
Well, we, of course, thank you for your service to the American people during your time as Secretary of State. We wish you the best during your break. It is very well deserved. Keep in touch. Let us know what you stay up to. Best of luck with the writing. We'll be very interested to read it all. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. You just watched Newsmax TV, America's fastest growing cable news channel, now in more than 70 million homes. You can get Newsmax TV on your cable system or check your cable guide. And if your system doesn't carry Newsmax, call them, tell them you want Newsmax TV, because we're real news for real people.